And it's really come to really not dawn on me, but accept this, that it is all about the people. Whatever you do, even software, we all glorify software and tech and repeatable automation, but all of that is set up by people. So if it's all about the people, well, then the culture is like it's like this conscious and subconscious fabric of how we interact and what we value as a group of people working towards a common goal.
What's up, everybody? My name's Mike Sjogren, here with my co-host
Emmanuel Lavoie.
We're part of a group of specialized real estate investors you've probably never heard of.
We didn't start with deep pockets or wealthy families, and we don't rely on 401ks, mutual funds, or traditional real estate investing.
In fact, many of us don't even own the properties that fund our freedom. If you ask the money experts out there, they'd say what we do is impossible, yet it's happening every single day.
It's happening through a new niche called short-term rentals.
We are Short-Term Rental Nation, and these are our secrets. What's going on? This is Emmanuel, and welcome back to another episode of the Short-Term Rental Secrets podcast. I'm your host, Mike Sjogren, here with my main man and brother from another mother, Mr. Emmanuel Lavoie. What's up, B?
My brother, so good to see you. I missed you last week, but you guys were traveling back from Orlando. Glad to see you back in your usual spot, though. I hope the weather is not too bad up there.
It was 3 degrees today, by the way. 3. So I miss Florida immensely right now.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, dude, I don't know how you guys do that. I would move down here for good. But man, life is good. Super busy with, we are rereading traction as a company, and kind of like redialing in our vision for especially our property management business, our vacation rental management business. So that's been a lot of fun. Very, very difficult to actually find properties right now to buy. Our market is super competitive. Actually helped one of our students put an offer on a place. Our buddy John, we want 50,000 over asking, and somebody outbid us. To the point that I told John that there's nothing, like, we just gotta let it go. So that's been happening a lot lately. So if you are in a market like mine in South Florida, you just got to keep your hopes up and try to find a way to find deals before they hit the market. So that's where a lot of our focus is going for ourselves and our clients. But it's an interesting spot to be, because usually there was deals and now people had not too much money, and now there is so much money and there's no deals. So it's going to be very interesting to see what comes. But overall, dude, the market is still looking super solid. So we're very grateful. Operations are good. So no complaints, How's the house? Is the house finished?
No, it'll be about another month. They're moving along. Most of the house is done. It's just doing all the custom stuff is taking a while. So it's getting there. But I had that company go and do the pool leak test today, and he found 6 leaks in my pool that's 1 year old. And so
nice.
Not too happy about that. And so he's emailing me the report today, and I'm going to forward that off to the pool company that installed it and see what we can work out. So,
well, welcome to the Florida craftsmanship.
It's a good lesson for everybody, though, right? Like when you're getting into real estate, stuff is going to come up. So that's why it's not just factoring in your budget, like, closing costs, down payment, furniture. Like, you need to have some reserves, because even on a new build, like, stuff can go sideways. Like, we replaced a bunch of stuff that I did not anticipate, but we had reserves in place for that. So it is what it is.
And actually, before we get started, that brings up a good point, because that's something that I made a point with a client that recently bought a property. When you do an inspection, there is a pool. The inspector looks at the pool equipment, but does not look at the pool itself. So if you are doing vacation rentals, even if you're buying it for yourself, obviously you want to know, but especially for vacation rentals, I would highly, highly, highly recommend, if you're buying something with a pool, and something that I've learned myself, so I'm going to do it moving forward in everything we do, an actual leak inspection. Because the pool, like my client John, he just bought a place, and we ended up spending about $2,500 to fix a bunch of leaks that he also had. We could have definitely renegotiated if we had known they were there, or at least had it fixed. So it's definitely worth the $300, $350, $400, whatever it is that you may pay in your specific market, but get it done, because again, $2,500, that's enough furniture to do a room and a half, right? So if you are really tight with your budget, those extra $2,500 can make a big difference.
100%. I have a feeling mine's gonna be more than 2,500 after everything you shared, but it is what it is. So before we introduce today's guest, who I'm really excited to bring on, just wanted to remind people that Mark Simpson's book, by the time this airs, I think it's coming out like tomorrow. So Mark Simpson, good buddy of ours, founder of Boostly, he is the direct booking ninja, and he's got a new book, the Direct Book Playbook, or the Book Direct Playbook, excuse me. And you guys can go get a copy of that. Go to boostly.co.uk/book. I'm anxious to get my hands on it. We've had Mark on the show multiple times. He's spoken to our private mastermind students multiple times. He is a ninja when it comes to direct bookings, and highly encourage you to get a copy of that book. So shout out to Mark. He's an awesome dude and he knows what he's talking about. So go grab the book. And so for today's episode, we have Emmanuel Lavoie, or I should be better at French. My grandmother was from France, but I need to work on that. But he is the CEO of Jetstream Hospitality Solutions. It's an all-in-one technology platform and services solution that provides a powerful way for owners, managers, and developers of multi-unit short-term rental properties to maximize revenues and realize opportunities in the STR and flex rental market. Jetstream combines best-in-class marketing expertise and distribution technology with high-quality customer support to deliver guest delight, streamline operations, and reduce financial risk. An engineer and entrepreneur, Emmanuel is a disciple of data-driven decision-making. I love that. And leading by values. Also love that. And when he's not trying to build an exemplary business, he can be found skiing, sailing, or paragliding. Wow, interesting.
Wow.
Emmanuel, welcome to the show, man.
Thank
You're
you
living
so
on
much.
the edge over there.
Yeah. I actually met my business partner of Jetstream paragliding in 2010-11 at the top of a mountain. We're both strapped in about to fly, and that was the beginning of this journey. So I owe a lot to that sport.
So the
That's
name
awesome,
seems
man.
the name seems very fitting now.
It is, yeah. We
Yeah.
created. Sorry, I'm going to shut my phone off. Somebody tried calling me. Terrible timing. It's done, fixed, airplane mode. So when we hired a brand agency to create the Jetstream brand, which was born of our previous company, Leavetown, that was part of our love of aviation. That's where it came from. So there we are. I'm super stoked to be on the show. Thanks for the opportunity. I've been binging your show the last little bit, and genuinely, I'm not saying thanks to be nice. I love what you guys are doing, and you have a new fan of the show here, 100%.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate that. And we appreciate
I also gotta
being
say that I love your name. You have a great name.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the funny part too. And we just chatted about this before, but my business partner's name is Mike. So we're Mike and Emmanuel, and you guys are Mike and Emmanuel, which is unbelievable. And so some people refer us as M&M, which is pretty funny.
Oh, that's funny. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So tell us a little bit more about like what got you into this whole industry now, and then we'll get into more about what Jetstream does and the solutions.
Yeah. So my journey is a bit, I've been in real estate since the beginning, but definitely different sides of it. So I graduated in mechanical engineer in 2002. So it gives you a bit of I'm not in my 20s anymore. I'm in my early 40s. And I ended up by accident as a consulting HVAC engineer, sizing ducts and pipes for buildings. And I, no offense to that profession, but I did not like it. And in my spare time, I was reading books, not of engineering, but I was reading like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the E-Myth, which was, and the more I read, the more I realized the business model that I was in the quadrant, the best I could do was self-employed, basically. And the only way to make more money was to sell more hours and hire more people to sell more hours. I just didn't like fundamentally the business model. But I ended up stuck in it for about 9 years because I bought a house, and then 2008 kind of wiped me out for a bit. So I had to dig myself out of that hole. But the second I had a chance to get out, I did. And that's when I had already met my business partner, Mike, paragliding, like I said. So he then knew I was leaving engineering. He said, I got this tiny little company at the time called Leavetown. Would you want to join me and buy a portion of the business? So I did, and I was number 5 in the company at the time. And that's how I went from HVAC engineering to, honestly, the first year and a half, I don't really think we really knew what we were doing, but we ultimately found a product market fit.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. And I feel like that story is so common with people in our industry where they just kind of like take a chance or like somehow end up in the industry, and then they're like, this is amazing. Like, I love it.
It's fun. It's hyper dynamic. And
Yes.
you know, there's a lot of players, but not everyone is competent and organized. So it's not to say it's an easy business, but if you display those elements, you have a good chance of rising to the top.
100%.
I love
100%. So what did Jetstream start as, and what has it morphed into? Because I'm sure that it has morphed over time.
Oh, big time. We got a wild journey fit for how I built this basically. But so Mike, my business partner's journey is he had an exit in England, and he's about 10 years older than I. So he moved to Canada after his exit in the tech space, and he was minted. He bought, you know, multiple condos and a resort building and a float plane and the sailboats and all this stuff. And unfortunately, he bought in 2006, right before the crash. And in Alberta, where he bought, got hit hard by the crash because of the oil industry. So he ended up kind of selling a lot of real estate at a loss, and he had a few left, and he started renting them on Vrbo at the time, before Airbnb even, just to get cash flow to pay his mortgage. And what's important is that it was they were all the same. There were like 3 or 4 2-bedroom condos in a resort building in Canmore, Alberta. So with one listing on Vrbo at the time, it was the old days of you paid a platinum fee per year. He could get
these days.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the good times.
Oh, I think one year he did $1 million in sales with a $2,000 listing fee. That's the heyday of low cost of acquisition days.
So good.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, so that's what he did, and he was good at it. So the resort management company, because they went through their own turmoil with bankruptcy and so on, but when they emerged, they said, hey, you know, you're good at getting these bookings for your units. If we gave you wholesale on the whole resort, could you also do your thing and get us bookings? And he did. And eventually they're like, hey, we got other destinations. This is all Western Canada. Would you be willing to, and so on and so forth. And so from 2009, 10 to 2015, when I joined the business, he amassed, you know, a good amount of resort management codes on the Canadian West Coast. But what we were trying to do, and what he was trying to do, was actually not to do this Vrbo thing. We're trying to create an OTA called leavetown.com, which we still own. It's still our niche, our direct channel, so to speak, of our business. But the vision then was this content-rich moose and grizzlies and Canadian Rockies kind of thing with all this blog content that was going to drive all this organic traffic. It never worked, but we kept trying. But in the meantime, to pay our bills, we were putting these ads on VRBO and getting bookings. And our resort partners didn't even know this. This is what we're doing. And it took us a while to come out of the closet, so to speak, and eventually realize, hey, this kind of back-end distribution to new channels is where it's at. And our resort partners actually want it. So Airbnb obviously came up the scene. We were doing that on Airbnb as well. And there's a town called Banff. It's Banff National Park in Canada. It's one of the premier tourist destinations. It's very regulated. So a single homeowner there cannot be on Airbnb. It's a national park and it's not that big, so they can regulate pretty well. So we were the only ones with Airbnb ads in Banff because we were representing the actual resort management codes, which was legal because it was proper hospitality. And by proper, I just mean licensed. So eventually Airbnb approached us and said, hey, how come you guys have all this inventory there? And can you build an API? And we're like, sure, we'll build an API to you. But the problem is it's all room type inventory. So a listing will appear as a 2-bedroom condo on Airbnb, but we have 50 of those to sell. And the tech of Airbnb then and Vrbo then was there was only one listing. There was only one unit of inventory. So if the booking happened, they'd shut down the calendar, even though we had 49 more to sell. So we were vocal about this, and Airbnb invited us to actually hack their API, believe it or not. We came up with this engineering concept, they review it, and they approved it, and we built it, and we became the first multi-unit or rep level distribution partner to Airbnb in the world. This was 2017. And on the heels of that, same with Vrbo, we were the 4th with them. So it was this huge blue ocean moment. So we did a Series A at the time, and we raised from some local Vancouver investors. And we just expanded. So that's the distribution side. But what happened is these resort management codes, they use software systems like PMS systems and channel managers to distribute because they're traditional hospitality. Even though it's condo resorts with kitchens, they're still essentially condo hotels or traditional hotel management codes, resort management codes. So we bridge the gap between their TravelClick and Snexus and other hotel type channel managers and Airbnb. And again, we were the first to bridge those gaps, which is a big blue ocean moment because that's a very, very large industry. And we didn't just bridge the tech gap, we bridged the service gap. And that, what I mean by that is, on top of the tech, we layer two human services. One is content creation. These hotel management, resort management codes don't know how to write Airbnb friendly content. They never had to. Most of their content is programmatically created on Booking and Expedia, and their own websites have very, very little content. So they hire us for that expertise. And then we have agents located in Canada and Spain and in the Philippines, all our own teams. And we respond to all guest inquiries on all channels 24/7. So that's the solution that we created by listening to the demand of our resort partners. And essentially we took them from what it was historically for them purely hotel channels onto the growing alternative at the time, STR channels. And that's how Leavetown went from being an OTA idea that never really worked out into this back-end distribution company. And that's when we birthed Jetstream in 2018.
What an interesting story.
Yeah.
So what's in the business right now? So what's included in the business? Are you still you still have an operation side where you guys run your own units, or are you just now in the back of the house?
We're always, so far we've been back of the house. Just one more piece of information on this journey, because I think it's worth mentioning. In 2018, we actually sold the company to a company that you probably know called Red Awning in the US. And that was going to be a 2-year earnout. We sold 100% of the shares. And then at the beginning of COVID, everybody buckled pretty hard because of the cancel rate that we had to anyways. So we took that opportunity, led by my business partner, Mike, and we repurchased 100% of the shares of the company. So we sold it, reacquired it, and now there's no venture capital in the business. So it's 100% employee-owned company.
Nice.
Which we're super proud of. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very proud of. So yes, so what's evolved from this is we still do the business that I just explained to you. We work with about 200 accounts. We work with the 3 largest hotel chains in the world in some capacity doing this, and others such as Vail Resorts and so on. So probably have about 45,000 doors under distribution. But it's not like if you had 40,000 doors. Our performance per listing is nowhere near what you guys are achieving or what we're achieving with another part of our business, because we don't control rates, we don't control availability. We're a flow through of that data on top of which we layer rich content in our guest services. So it's good, and we're making money, and it's not insignificant, but it's not as if somebody had 40,000 exclusive doors. That would be a different story.
Because so the hotel chains, they are still in control of their rate and their occupancy. So they don't push you guys in the sense of hey, occupancy is low. That's their own responsibility. You guys are just creating content, pushing advertising, and then you give them support with the guest services.
Yes.
So do guests that book through your stuff, do they contact you? So when they go to the hotel, are they contacting the front desk or they're contacting you guys? Great question.
It's surprising how many of our guests check in at because there's it's a hotel, there's kitchens and units, but it's a hotel, and they get their key card at the front desk and so on. Yeah. And then they get in the room and something's wrong, and they message us through the Airbnb app, which is fascinating. So yeah, they're messaging us most of the time. They're messaging us, and we deal with the whole reviews afterwards. We review every guest on behalf. So it's like a real full service kind of STR channel management solution for the traditional hospitality. That's one part of our business. And then over the years, what's happened is some of our customers started building new assets and said, hey, you guys are pretty good at this. Would you mind just managing the entire distribution of this asset, not just Airbnb, Vrbo, and Leavetown.com? And that's what the last 2 years we've been building. So now we support all distribution channels, Booking and Expedia and Home2Go and Holiday and Marriott Homes and Villas and Google, including the ability to support a direct channel. So we've essentially gone from being almost like a channel manager extension to now being a full PMS, all our own tech. And that's what we keep doing. And we have integrations with the keyless solutions and revenue management, because in this case, the asset owner is looking to us to do the whole thing, not the on-site operations. We always partner with on-site operators, but do the whole technology, distribution, guest comms layer.
I love that you said that, because that was my question, right? It's what are you, what do you see yourself as? Do you see yourself as a PMS company, or do you see yourself as a distribution kind of marketing company?
Yes.
So I'm glad that you kind of specified that.
Yes.
So we've had a decent amount of PMSs on the podcast. And I think what's fascinating, that I say this every time, I love software developers, I love engineers, and this is a passion, like this is a newfound respect that I've had since I started doing this podcast, because I love how you guys approach problems. And the other thing, I love how open you are to feedback and criticism and in working with each other. So what would you say, other than the marketing side, which is obviously super unique to you guys, what is something else that you guys do that is a little bit different than other PMSs out there due to your unique kind of like how you have come to being who you guys are, right? You've had such a unique kind of journey that most other PMSs companies that we've had on did not have.
That's right. Yeah. So, so we are a PMS, but it's a custom PMS that we're not selling to anybody else as a PMS. We only sell Jetstream as the whole solution. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's very unique. There's not a lot of companies doing that. There's a few, but there's not that many, especially in the multi-unit condo hotel space. So as users of our own system, that gives us certain advantages, which, we're front lines. Like we're a team of 36, maybe 8 or 9 software developers in that group. So the rest is account management and business development and guest communications with the 24/7. So we're front lines of anything that goes wrong instantly. So our feedback loop, whether it's inappropriate, wrong content, or some tech glitch introduced, that we're very, very quick at closing our loop on fixing, because we're the only users of our software. But it has pros and cons because it's expensive to build software. So, we can't deploy that capital expenditure at scale like a PMS can necessarily.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, and you touched on one of my favorite books, The E-Myth. It takes some serious systems to even just handle guest communication for 45,000 listings. So like, what did that journey look like for you to standardize, to go from a couple, I don't want to minimize it, but from a few partnerships to scaling this thing to a mass amount of units? Like, you have to have your operations dialed in on like, this is all the information we need for every property. This is how we respond to guests. This is how we communicate. This is how we do everything from that standpoint. I don't think people fathom what that would, like, I have 1,000th of your, I have 42 units. I can't imagine handling guest communication for 45,000 units. Like, that's immense.
So 45,000 units is doors. In terms of listings, it's about 4,200 listings, because we have multiple doors behind, but it's still a lot of listings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, it's been evolved over the last 5-6 years. It's been a journey, because also what adds complexity to what we do is we're a very unique player, bringing multi-unit or representative style inventory onto these historically not representative style channels. Like on Airbnb, you get what you buy, but we're pushing inventory that's actually, well, this is sort of what you're going to get, but it might not be exactly that. So we've really had to refine our content around that in a way that it says that, but not in a way that's too off-putting to the guest. So there's been a journey to set this up, but we have just wonderful people. Our team of guest comms is 8, and that's spanning Canada, Spain, and the Philippines. We use HubSpot with the service layer of HubSpot as we built this large wiki of content that all team members can access when they want. Also, our proprietary tech has a lot of the content information linked in within it, or links to our Google Drive, where so if a booking comes in on a new property, the team, we call it B2C, business to consumer, but the guest facing team can just click, okay, I need to learn about this now. And the reality is too, at first we don't know all the answers, and we'll call the partner and say, guest is asking XYZ question, and then we'll add that information in the wiki. So in terms of what else, we use Slack as an internal tool. So in Slack, and I think that's the HubSpot with the ticketing system, Slack, with an internal wiki, and Google Drive links to every single partner, and round we go, 24 hours a day.
Yeah,
I love it.
That's great. So I'm curious of something, right? Because this is something that like I've experienced myself, and maybe Mike can speak of this as well. What have you guys found to be best practices in communicating with your team? Because I assume you have a certain way you want to come across, right? In the sense of like, how to talk to guests. So how, and this is a very selfish question for me because it's a learning process for me, but it's just like, how do you train, or what is the best way to train your, let's say you hire a VA, or let's say we have a listener that is in the like 10 to 15 unit range, and they're like, okay, I'm going to hire a VA. What have you found is best practices to teach them how to speak in your language? Does that make sense? Does my question make sense?
Yeah, exactly. The brand language, I guess.
The brand language, yes.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if I'll be able to provide a super satisfactory answer, but I mean, we have a director of the guest-facing team in the business, and part of her job is hiring and training who we hire.
Yeah,
we don't hire at scale, so we haven't had to figure out how to onboard 20 people and teach them all that at the same time. It's very kind of, one every 4 or 5 months. So there's kind of an institutional knowledge transfer that happens organically in the business. But there we do have a training program. I can't speak to it specifically because honestly, I haven't, Anna, who's wonderful and is your director, she's developed this training program, but I'd say it's probably it's step by step because there's a lot of complexity. And then whether or not it's an exclusive listing, like what I was telling you about where we distribute all channels, or it's just a flow through listing with it's all different and there's a lot of pieces. So I think it's probably like a 10 to 12 week modularized training program that we do. I don't know if we have an actual brand voice. I think we're just good people. Like number one core value in the business is we deliver guest and partner, because there's two sides to our equation, delight as with you guys' business. So that's number one core value. I mean, it's not the number one above the others.
I love that core value. That's a strong core value.
Yeah. So it's ingrained. We're very, very, very culture driven, much more so than the average company. And so that's it. So you do that. That's rule number one, deliver guest delight.
Yeah. I think that one thing I've learned over the last 18 months as we've grown our team quite a bit is if you focus on building the right culture, a lot of the other stuff kind of takes care of itself, which there's so much like fluff around the word culture, but I wish I could articulate it better. But when you have that culture of people focusing on, prioritizing delight for guests and owners, and that's constantly in the fabric of every conversation, everything, a lot of those other little minute things will take care of themselves through some additional training and things like that. And you won't have to constantly monitor to be like, well, why did they say this? Why did they say that? If that value is really embedded in your culture, a lot of that stuff will work itself out.
You're totally right, Michael. I 150% agree. It's all about, when we raised capital the first time, our investors said, kept saying, and I was a bit younger then, I didn't know, but it's all about the people. It's all about the people. They would always repeat that. And it's really come to really not dawn on me, but accept this, that it is all about the people. Whatever you do, even software, we all glorify software and tech and repeatable automation, but all of that is set up by people. So if it's all about the people, well, then the culture is like it's like this conscious and subconscious fabric of how we interact and what we value as a group of people working towards a common goal. So culture is everything because it's all about the people, and the culture is how people agree to work together in a way.
Yeah.
So,
100%.
Super important. And I love, because we've touched on this a couple of times, and I talked about rereading Traction. If you haven't read Traction, it's such a great book. And one of the main things that I find so valuable for Traction is it's how you set up your vision and really coming to those core values and understanding what your core values are. Because again, it becomes super easy for you to create the right culture, because once you show the core values to the people you hire, it becomes very easy. So one of our core values is that we choose kindness always, right? So it's just like, what does that mean? It's very simple. We choose kindness always. So no matter what happens with a guest, no matter what happens with a client, our response is always kindness.
That's beautiful.
So that's very easy for you to tell somebody that it's a VA that starts with you, and it's just like, this is our core values. What does that mean? No matter what somebody says on the phone or via email, you take a breath and you choose kindness, because that's who we are as people. And if you're not a person that can choose kindness, this is not a company for you to work in.
That's very powerful. If I can share a little exercise we did with your listeners, which
we love that,
was when we raised our Series A, one of our leads, or the lead basically said, hey, do you guys have an HR person? We didn't at the time. So he recommended this wonderful woman who was part of our journey for a few years. And one of the first things she did is after work, we did the classic pizza and beers. It's so cliche, but we actually did it. And maybe 2/3, and at the time we worked in an office in Vancouver, so 2/3 of people showed up. And she gave everybody 5 sticky Post-it notes, and everybody was asked to write what would be a culture or a value, a core value of a company that if you started your own company, what would you want your 5 core values to be? And then everybody put their Post-its up on the wall, and then we as a group kind of group them together. So someone say like, delivering guest delight, or pleasing the customer, or the customer is always right. And that would be like the bucket, so we created these buckets, and it was still myself and my business partner, Mike's ultimate choice as to which one we chose. But she said that she'd never seen in a company where there's so much alignment, because we did the exercise ourselves before, Mike and I. She kind of got us to do that before. Alignment between management and ownership's core values and the team. So that was probably one of the more transformational things we did for the business, because from there we had a collective set of core values created together. And I use that all the time when I'm selling our business.
Yeah. And it becomes super easy because it's also for you to sell your business. So whatever your aspect of short-term rental is, so if you're in the industry as a manager and you're looking to grow your management company, understanding your core values, that becomes what you sell. Yes. And then you don't have that, I don't know what we're special. It's your core values, and people appreciate that. And I love, Emmanuel, that you said that, because what is funny is that in our company, we did the opposite, right? So we started drawing core values based on the things that we loved about our team. And then myself and Tasha, my wife, we did it last. And what we realized is everything we loved about our team is things that we want to emphasize in ourselves. But the majority of our core values are inspired by the people that work with us, and they're not ours. They are ours, but they're also theirs. And that's why our team works so well together.
And you chose those people consciously or subconsciously as well, because of these things that you love and that you seek in others. So it's
100%.
Yeah.
I love that.
Me too. I can speak about culture all day long.
I'll transition into this because it ties into one of our core values, which is keep it simple. And I love the infographic that you have on the site on how it all works. Check it out, jetstreamtech.io. You can scroll down to say where it says how it works. And it highlights a couple different things that I thought was interesting, because a lot of people have ways to get on a lot of the platforms, but I haven't seen anybody else offer listing optimization services or guest relation services, things like that differentiate a product like yours. And then again, it's on the left side, it's who do we work with? You've got service departments, big high rises, you've got resorts and hotels, and then you have property managers that are running a bunch of single family homes.
Yeah.
Right. So again, this power and simplicity in defining who you are and what you're about. And the reason I'm bringing that up is, one, this is a really cool idea, but two, to make it tangible for somebody that's building a property management business or a short-term rental business, identifying who you serve, what differentiates you, and why somebody should work with you, and keeping that simple and having that nice and tight will make your life 1,000 times easier to go prospect and get new clients. The mistake that I made at the beginning was I went really wide. I took small stuff, big stuff, this state, that state, and I went really wide instead of getting clear on these are the properties that we want to work with, and these are the guests that we want to serve, and then creating a niche around that. Now we're kind of all over the map, and it's worked out. But if I was going to do it again, I would have taken this approach to get real clarity around we're the high-end villa management company in this market, or we service B2B clients in this market, or whatever it is, and niche down. And I guarantee that your business will grow faster that way.
100%. Yeah. So 2 things on the schematic side. I think in schematics, my brain. So that's where this whole
engineering thing, you can't turn it off.
I can't. I used to draw schematics for building systems. It's systems, but it works really well to sell a schematic. I probably pitched that schematic, or I have a more complex version of it. It's a little bit more detail, 4 times a day. Not kidding. When I hire people, this is what we show and so on. But yeah, on your point of niche or focus, I think right now we're actually Jetstream a little bit too I think we're still finding, like, we know our first version of the business, we call it V1 internally. It's the resort hotel management codes. That's one of our big, and that's good. We got that part. But moving forward in terms of who we sell this white labeled tech distribution, guest comms, and listing optimization, content creation service, we have different customers. We have a few single homeowners. It's really not the space we want to be actively. I mean, if they find us, great, but we don't want to really build looking. And on the other side, we have a large US pension fund that's acquired 10 hotels, 2,200 rooms, and they've hired us to represent their made up brand on all channels. And we have something on in between. We have realtors, brokers, which I think is a very, very promising sector, and even a small hotel boutique operator. So we need to kind of really figure out, we're trying to, we've put we put strings out into the world, and we're seeing which string pulls. And there's some that are pulling harder than the others. And I think we're going to really, next 2022, we're going to kind of focus on those strings. Last year, couple of years, we're like figuring out where the strings we're going to pull.
Yeah. No, and I actually love that about your website. It's just like all the different, because it's really understanding all the players in this kind of space, and understanding that now there is more and more players that you can target to, and their needs are slightly different, but they're all kind of like in the same boat, right? Like I'm a real estate broker, property manager, and it's the first time that I've been able to go to a PMS and be like, oh wait, they have a thing for realtors, which is very interesting, but it's kind of where the future is going.
I think so.
So I love this, and I love just how clean everything is. And I think that the idea of bringing with you this kind of chart or this flow is actually, it's super helpful regardless of what your kind of brain type is. There is a certain element of showing up with a graph that just makes you look more put together. So I think it's a great hack for people.
And even better,
pictures. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Michael.
I was just going to say, we as humans, like we think in pictures. So like if you can put together a clear, concise image for someone, it's a lot easier for them to process that than just like lots of data and a lot of things. It's like, that's why infographics work. They just simplify things into a picture.
I find it's even better when you can draw it in real time, because you look at that schematic, that one's quite simplified. My other schematic is much so, but because I can't meet people in life because of COVID in the last few years, I've created like a 7-page PDF where just elements get added to the PDF, and that way you can tell the story. So here's our technology in the middle, then next slide, and then boom,
and here's people pay attention.
Yes, as opposed to just being overwhelmed and trying to read everything at first.
Yeah, that's actually something that I think Mark Yegi also taught us, is like, when you're presenting something, don't hand people something to look at, because then the natural propensity of a lot of people is they get something and they'll start looking at it, and then they won't pay attention to what you're saying or you're doing, because they're trying to figure out where you're going. So that way it's very interesting for you to keep kind of the attention and everything else.
Yeah,
I loved it. Where do you see 2022 going from for our hosts? So the majority of our listeners are our hosts. What are some kind of things that you guys are seeing, like writing on the wall, that you're telling hosts you should concentrate on this?
Well, I think we believe that the rise of two things. First of all, I call them midterm stays. So it's not long-term leases, but it's the midterm longer stays. Mm-hmm. And then the rise of flex real estate development. So one at a time, longer stays. So we have a great property manager, a partner in Cape Cod, and she's actually a realtor, and she owns a cleaning company, and she's bolted Jetstream on top of that. And all of a sudden she's a full service property management co without having to get technology and so on. So it's a very seasonal destination, Cape Cod. So obviously it's hard for small operators to grow and scale there because there's not enough business in the winter to keep your staff and so on. So what we've been really pushing hard is the longer term stays, and we've managed to more or less fill her year 1 4 units from 0 to 4 in year 1 to with 1 month or 6 week stays, which is pretty good because it's a very low season destination. So I think we're going to be spending a lot more energy, technology, learnings on targeting longer term stays during non-peak occupancy seasons. And Airbnb is good at that, but there's other channels that are emerging for that. So that's one of the things that I think we all got to be really getting good at. And that can be something as simple as just setting your promos correctly for longer term stays, because a lot of people don't. And then on the flex living, I don't know if that's so, as for your host, I don't know, but we're definitely seeing, I'm talking to real estate developers. I just went to the America's Lodging Investment Summit in LA, just came back yesterday. And there's now a growing, I guess, awareness from some of the big money, the real estate developers and institutional investors, that flex is coming, and they want to build assets that will be able to flex between long-term and short-term rentals, or even mid-term rentals. And in their words, I want to let the market dictate to me, the asset owner, how I should be doing my mix. And so if people can find an expertise in that, because it's a bit of a different, you're bridging long-term, mid-term, short-term, I think there's opportunity there.
Super interesting. I think the flex space, that's definitely something. And I think what has happened, I think in the last 10 years, especially when it comes to business, is before businesses used to be a bunch of people sitting in a room being like, what do we make people like next? Right? Like, what is the next trend that we can create onto people? And now businesses are realizing through social, through everything else, is like, wait, we can actually just, if we stay as open as possible, we can then see what you were saying with the lines, right? Like which line it's pulling, and then we'll kind of pivot that way.
Exactly.
Which should be the same setup you have as a real estate investor, because that's both me and Mike have gone over this in our journey. Is if you stay too rigid on one way just because you think that's the right way, sometimes you're gonna get slapped in the face. And our mentor Rock used to always tell us, he or she who is most flexible wins.
Yes.
So that is always something that you should keep in mind, because being rigid is something that used to work very well in the past. And I don't think it's going to ever again.
No. So first of all, being nimble is, you can not institutionalize that, but the culture in the business helps have that mindset. So that connects our culture conversation. And then, it was interesting, the chats I had. Very much is this one big real estate developer from Florida who's been building, flagged Marriott hotels for 25 years, basically said to me, they do decisions based on analytics, and they pay consultants to do projections and so on. He said, and everything's just gone out so much the window, and everything's just changing so fast. He said, I don't want to now base my large multi-million development projects on that. I want to build an asset that can respond to market conditions. I thought, wow. But he was like, this one particular guy was a small segment of the conversations I've had. So it's still emerging. It's very new, as far as I can tell from my conversations, this mindset. So those who are there first will capitalize on this, I think.
100%.
And if the trends can keep continuing with, I don't know if the office space will ever fully recover, but I think COVID kind of forced everybody's hand to test out the whole remote working thing. And a lot of people like it, and it's a free benefit, and it saves companies money. So if you could go work in, I've got a friend who's living in Medellin right now, and he can do whatever he needs to do from down there, right? So if you have a flex type of space like that, I'm going to go live in this cool community with other people like me for a month or 2 months, and then I'm going to go here and live in a cool flex community for a month or 2 months. So like, I definitely see that as a trend for some of the younger demographics, is like just like that's just like the new way to work.
It is. We've had the biggest shift in how humans work, probably in the history of humankind, in the last 2 years, imposed by obviously the pandemic. So I don't think we're gonna, yes, there'll be some, some companies are forcing everybody back and so on, but still, there's probably, I don't know how many billions of people that have changed how they work. A certain percentage of that are gonna keep the old model, the new model, and that presents opportunity.
100%. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. And before we get into our last question, I want to thank you for coming on the show and for sharing all of your wisdom and your journey, and for building a really cool product that's going to help a lot of people. And so excited to see where you and Jetstream go over the next 12, 24 months, and how everything adjusts, and where you guys take that. And so for the listeners, make sure you go check them out. It's jetstreamtech.io. jetstreamtech.io. And is there anywhere else that the listeners should reach out to you guys?
Yeah, sure. I mean, my email is Emmanuel, EMMANUEL @jetstreamtech.io. I can be found on LinkedIn. Always keen for any conversation, be it interest in our business or just general meeting new people in the industry. So awesome. Please reach out.
Great. We appreciate it. And so the last question that we ask all of our guests is, what is your number one secret to success with short-term rentals?
So yeah, I think because of our unique path that we've taken to get, we're not the traditional founder story in this space is I started with one unit and then I built more units. We've kind of started with some units and then took a path down a software route of distribution and so on. I think that what's made us successful and able to be essentially profitable tech business in the space right now is listening to our customers. We've built software by listening to our customers and building something they were ready to pay for. And it seems I see a lot of tech right now I have an idea, I'm gonna go raise 2 million as a seed on my idea, then we're gonna build the tech, and it's expensive and hard to build tech. And then I hope it works. I hope I have product market fit. So I think really always building tech for somebody who sees the value and is willing to pay for it, I think that is what has gotten us to where. And then of course, tons of hard work and perseverance and all the other things, but I think it starts with that.
That's great. That's great. Well, Emmanuel, thank you again so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. And we'll definitely be in touch.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, guys. And you got a great podcast. Thanks.
Thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
Take care, everybody.
Ciao.
Hey, STR Nation, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. And in the comments, let us know what topics you want us to cover on upcoming episodes, and we'll make sure to get that in the books for you. And if you really want to learn how to launch, automate, and scale your short-term rental business, if you want to go deeper, then check out our free masterclass at strsecrets.com.